Consider a connected vehicle generating its trajectory constantly, and this data is sensitive to the user that it belongs to. If this data is being generated on a large scale, and if somebody can access this data maliciously, they could infer what we call point of interest. So, like, let's say my gym, my place of work, my place of worship. That brings up a big privacy question, which we are trying to address here. C2 Smart is a US DOT Tier 1 research center. The focus is for connected vehicles, connected transportations, and mobility challenges in smart cities.
And the whole idea is to do cutting edge advanced research in transportation and then to train and educate students and also do technology transfer. My name is Kaan Azbey. I'm a professor at NYU School of Engineering. I'm also the director of C2 Smart University Transportation Center. We were involved in a project called a New York City Connected Pilot to test connected vehicles. And this was basically about instrumenting connected vehicles and infrastructure and providing information to those vehicles to make sure that they're not involved in accidents, they avoid dangerous situations. A part of that project, there's a lot of information coming from the vehicles. One of the challenges we faced is how do you save that information in a secure way, and how do you ensure privacy?
I'm Junaid Khan and I'm an assistant professor at Western Washington University. So currently, CAVs generate what we call spatiotemporal trajectories, which is timestamp information of all the locations that they go. And this data could be useful. For example, if we have an accident, we could analyze this data and take measures of what went wrong and then find solutions. We have this problem of how useful can this data be? At the same time, we have this trade-off with the privacy of the data. Let's find a solution for this, that we can use this data, means that you get it as accurate as you can, but at the same time, you don't let any third-party devices have access to this data.
The idea was to anonymize the data. Basically, when the data comes from the vehicles, you anonymize it, you aggregate it, so that it becomes completely unrecognizable.
There was another challenge that we had was, how do you validate this data? Let's say if I am a connected vehicle and then I'm relaying my trajectory data to another connected vehicle, how would they trust my data? That's where the point of validation comes into play. So we have a few peers around this vehicle that validate the data in real time.
What if instead of 3,000 vehicles, we had 1 million vehicles that are instrumented? How do we do that? So is there a way to bring this kind of data and use it in a more practical, scalable way if it was implemented in real world with thousands, even millions of vehicles?
Currently, there is no method of storing this data. C2 Smart came up with an idea of storing it on blockchain. Blockchain is mainly designed for business transactions, so we could use it as storage for these connected vehicles data. The idea of blockchain is to put this data on a distributed ledger that we know who can have access to the data, and we could also make use of the accurate data that's being generated by these devices.
Data is saved in a way where it's in a secure database. We know that from blockchain protocol that's coming from a real person or from a real car.
We've developed Thread, which is a blockchain-based platform, and the idea, it uses smart contracts with consensus algorithms, where these consensus algorithms would ensure that the data that the user shares is authentic. So it means it belongs to that user, it represents correctly the location and the time points. A few peers in the blockchain network would validate this data and then would store an entry into the distributed ledger, which we call IPFS. IPFS is a public distributed ledger that can record this transaction. But the transaction here is these spatiotemporal trajectories generated by these users. They're recorded after the validation process. This also ensures that we don't have unauthorized access to the data, so that makes the data secure. At the same time, we can implement whatever obfuscation or encryption schemes on top of it to make sure the user privacy is preserved. So there are currently no other CAV storage platforms. We were the first to try and store CAV trajectory and the spatiotemporal data on this IPFS-based distributed ledger or the blockchain platform. We've used data for around 700 vehicles that we've stored on this distributed ledger or Thread.
In the long run, the idea is to have this vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to infrastructure communication and decision making. We are hoping that all the DOTs are going to use this kind of information from mobile sensors, smartphones, infrastructure, cars, and so on to run this kind of algorithms that will improve the safety. I think the bigger risk is that transportation field is not still very much in tune with cybersecurity. In addition to doing the research, there's also need for raising awareness. So we need to make the transportation field more aware of the cybersecurity risks and the solutions that we can provide to improve cybersecurity. And this whole research has that additional goal to get people interested and then get more researchers into the field.